social movement and social action. And tonight we're going to be talking about engagement in our community. But I want to tell you a little bit first about our moderator. Our moderator tonight is Colton Nichols. Colton is a sophomore political science and communication studies double major with a minor in leadership studies from Charleston, West Virginia. On campus, Colton is also a senator for SGA, a diversity ambassador for DDEI, and a social media chair for the Center for Service and Learning Student Advisory Board. Colton is passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and LGBTQ+ rights. With that being said, Colton, go for it, brother.
Thank you so much. Hey y'all, my name's Colton Nichols, and I'll be moderating tonight's event with our distinguished guest, Ms. Rosemary Ketchum. I wanted to first take the opportunity, first and foremost, to tell all of you why I'm here tonight and why I decided to moderate this discussion with Rosemary. Being a member of the LGBTQ+ community myself, I understand what it means to be judged based on something that you have no control over. But on the other hand, I have privilege. I have privilege because I'm white. I have privilege because I'm a cisgendered man. I have privilege because I'm able-bodied, and I have privilege because I'm here in college and in front of you all tonight. I want to use the privilege that I have to uplift and to promote other underrepresented groups and support them to be heard, to be seen, and to be appreciated for the beauty that they bring to the table. I think we do that by understanding each other, communicating, and being exposed to one another. Tonight's goal is about the journey to ourselves. How do we stay ourselves and persist to engage in our communities? We also wanted to ensure with this event that we created a broad audience. Rosemary is more than just a trans woman, a trans politician, and the first trans person elected in the state of West Virginia. She's a human being that has felt that had the same struggles that we faced along our life journey. And finally, I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here, being willing to hear something new and to challenge yourself. I also want to thank the Center for Service and Learning for supporting students' passions and putting students first. Before we get started, I wanted to take just a moment of silence to remember our trans brothers and sisters who we have untimely lost. Thank you. And thank you all again for coming. Our speaker tonight is Rosemary Ketchum. Rosemary is a member of the City Council of Wheeling, West Virginia, representing Ward 3. She is also Associate Director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness Greater Wheeling Drop-In Center and on the boards of several organizations, including the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy. She has served as a guest speaker on MSNBC and the Today Show and has been profiled by several publications, including Time Magazine, CBS, and CNN for her work in community organizing and politics. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for joining me tonight.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Colton. I want to thank Amelia and Eric and Dr. Turner as well for helping put this incredible program together. I'm super excited.
Thank you. Rosemary, first off, before we get started to the questions, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what you're working on and kind of how we can support you in the goals you achieve.
Thank you. So I was elected to Wheeling City Council in June of this year, which was a million years ago in COVID time, but just a couple months. And I've already had an incredible experience, learning exactly how municipal politics work, but also engaging with folks across the state of West Virginia and really across the nation about important topics that matter, not just to folks around the nation, but are incredibly relevant and matter to people right here in the state of West Virginia. Issues we're working on here in the city of Wheeling include racial justice and homelessness. We're working on substance use disorder and so many other issues that I think are, of course, compounded by COVID-19, but will not go away anytime soon. So, so excited to be getting to do this work as a newly elected official, but also as a person who comes from a long line of incredible community organizers who helped me get here.
Great, that all sounds amazing, thank you. So let's start off with the first tough question here. You love yourself by creating a positive self-image without linking it only to achievements and accomplishments. How did you get to the point of loving yourself?
That's a great question. And I think that loving yourself is more of a journey than a destination. We all have our days where we do not feel good about ourselves. We do not feel as if we are making progress or we're not comfortable in the space we're in. So I don't want to lie to people and say that every day I just love myself and it's incredible. But I have grown a lot in the past couple years. And I think at a foundation level, this is a conversation about our mental health. I've worked in the field of mental health for many years now. I graduated with a degree in psychology and have worked as the associate director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness Drop-In Center, which is a really cool program. We actually have a clubhouse model center where folks can come in who have a diagnosed mental health condition and meet other people and work to end that stigma. And that work has taught me so much about what it means to love yourself and to, work on building a sense of self-worth despite, what the world would have you otherwise believe. And so it's an everyday process. And, like I said before, I think that foundationally it's a mental health conversation. And for me, really reminding myself of the reasons I'm involved is really important, because I'm sure as many people understand who are on this call, we feel burnout. It's there's so many things coming from so many angles, and it can be easy to feel like you're not doing enough. Or you're, not as impactful as you think you could otherwise be. But, working on your self-worth and building, I think, a space for self-love. I think that's really important. Usually we, expect there's not a single bath bomb in the world that can do what a good therapy session can do, or, a good, or what some introspection can provide. So those are some things that work for me. But again, every day is different. That's for sure.
Yes, no, exactly. Thank you. So approval from others can be pleasurable, but it can also control you, making you a puppet to other people with extraordinary pain and misery when others withhold their approval. How did you come to live for you and not how others thought you should be living?
Well, I think, at a human level, we all want to be liked, and approval is important, actually, to our human and to our feelings of self-worth. We want to be accepted and approved by our communities and our families and our friends. And so I don't think a world of approval is necessarily a bad thing. Rather, it's about what you're seeking to be approved or accepted from. And, for me, I want to make sure that people know who I am. I don't want anybody guessing what I stand for or what I believe in. And that's not an easy road. It would be very easy to be quiet and just like toe the line. But for me, I really drill down on my core principles, and those are trying to be as authentic as possible, leading from a place of compassion, all the while trying to remain vulnerable and open to experiences and other people. And that can be really tough because not everybody approves of the work that I do or the beliefs that I have or the pieces of legislation that I support. And that's okay. I think that, in our culture, we often see, opponents, particularly political opponents, as enemies. People who don't agree with us are immediately an enemy. I don't think that's a healthy place to start. Of course, there are some people who are kind of so far gone, they need to be, reined back in. But I don't think it's healthy to make enemies at the end of the day, regardless of whether they accept you or not. And so working from a place of honesty requires that you're honest with yourself and you try to understand, your motivations. And if your motivations are purely, ego-led, if your motivations are just to receive applause or approval, you're probably not in a good space. So I try to check myself all the time, but that's hard because I'm human, and that's a huge character flaw of us human beings.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it is often said that if you're going to choose to be upset by the lack of justice in the world, ensure there is something that you can do about it. Otherwise, it's wasted energy. Beware of using it as an excuse to do nothing or as an excuse to do something bad just because everybody else is doing it. With that understanding, what have you done in your community to promote equity? Maybe not something that's more obvious, but maybe the more subtle things.
That's a really great question. I find that people who don't know exactly what to do don't believe they should be involved, and that's absolutely the opposite. I first got involved and I first fell into politics because I cared about issues like racial justice and LGBTQ rights and access to, healthy and affordable food. And I didn't know how to get there. I didn't have all of these policy positions at 18 years old where I was like, I have the answer and you just have to listen to me. It's not how it works. So I think that it's really, really important, to ensure that you, again, are leading from a place of good intention and say, these are the, issues I believe in. And working in community organizing really taught me how to do that. And there were many pratfalls and many mistakes that I made to get to this point, but they all were incredibly important. And I think, your question is very valid because, as human beings, we are inherently flawed, and it feels as if, getting involved is too overwhelming, and I completely understand that. But taking it a step further is important. So ensuring that we are not just activists online is really important and really hard. Right now in COVID, you can't or shouldn't actually, go out and meet people and be together. And that is you can't have community. It's hard to have community organizing without the community or the organizing. But we're doing it. And, and I think doing it unapologetically is really important. So, for example, here in the city of Wheeling, this past October, last month, we became the first city in the entire state of West Virginia to declare racism a public health crisis. It was, something that I believed in before I was elected, and something that, has mattered very much here in the city of Wheeling, but I think across the state of West Virginia. Now, as a municipality, we do not have the authority to pass statewide or resolutions or legislation, but it mattered to me and it mattered to my city council to make good on the promise that we are the friendly city, which is our moniker. And so I hope that, that serves as an example of what can be achieved if you are unapologetically progressive and thoughtful in the way you legislate. And hopefully we see a snowball, similar, if folks remember, similar to the non-discrimination ordinances that we see popping up throughout different municipalities in the state of West Virginia. We do not have yet statewide protections, but we're going to get there. And that's because of the consistent action and vigilance and anger of these municipalities having to do it themselves. So yeah, I think that's one example, a more recent example of what it looks like to really, legislate and lead from a place of vulnerability, but a place of, unapologetic leadership.
Yes, thank you. You touched on a little bit about social media, and we live in a world of social media where that's we're always digesting it. So with people's online presence being constantly watched, how do you avoid being performative on social media?
So this is really important, and I think that both sides of this conversation are incredibly valid. So for example, I have a personal experience with this. About a year ago, I was working with an organization called Project ID, where we would, help folks who did not have access to their DMVs, did not have access to the funds to obtain their social security cards or birth certificates or IDs. We helped them along that process. And, you talk to many folks in our homeless community, having a valid state ID is one of, if not the biggest obstacle to gainful employment and sustainable housing and all kinds of other, resources that we take for granted, as people with those documents. So doing this work was really, really important to me. And we made a habit of asking, the clients we were serving if we could get a selfie to share online, both to talk about the work, kind of fundraise, talk about the work we're doing, but also really expose the need and say, this is an issue that people don't understand is an issue that we need to address. And loved doing that. It was incredible. But I remember getting a message from somebody, or actually it wasn't a message, it was a comment under something that I didn't even post. But it was about, performative social media posts. And they cited me as a performative social media organizer. And my heart sunk because it's literally the opposite thing I want to promote. And I stepped back and I thought, is this performative? Is this misjudgment? What's happening here? And while I understand that performative community organizing is a real thing, and some people are guilty of that, I don't feel, and did not feel in that moment, guilty. But it was a moment of reflection for myself to say, if I didn't have a Twitter account or an Instagram account, would I still be doing this work? And I think all people who are doing, good community organizing work need to ask themselves that. If I didn't have a camera on my phone, would I be out here doing this work? And if you can't answer that, question in a straightforward way, you should probably really rethink your intentions. And yet we need everybody at the table. So if you will go to a march just to take photos, you're still part of the march. So it's a complicated question for sure. But we really have to be putting the work in. And as an organizer, that was really frustrating to I've had many experiences where I'm at a march and I have a sign-up sheet and I have 100 people sign up to do something and 1 or 2 are actually going to follow through with it. So unfortunately, Instagram posts and retweets do not equate to legislation and actual governmental policies. So we need folks to be pushing and doing the work on the ground. So you have to have both. And also I'll say, Colton, you should also be taking pictures and showing people. That's really, really important. And I really push back on the fact that if you're doing good work, you shouldn't tell people about it. It ain't bragging if it's true. You should be showing people as much as possible, so long as you're keeping, confidentiality and dignity with the communities you're serving. There's something called poverty porn, and we talk about a lot of this in the community organizing world. We're not here to, show off the people we're helping. We're here to show off the good work. So it's about a balance, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so social media is something that, we always have to balance, and there's positives and negatives. Another thing, kind of going with what you talked about the comment you received, how do you think that we navigate cancel culture while recognizing that failure is something that we have to grow from?
Cancel culture is fascinating because, in one way I get it. And in the other way, I realize how problematic in and of itself it is. Because no matter how hard we try, we cannot cancel ideas. We can ban somebody from Twitter, or we can, unfriend them on Facebook, but those ideas still exist. And unless we're able to if we are really willing to build inclusive spaces, we have to have uncomfortable conversations. And I don't know a single trans person in the world who has not been forced to have uncomfortable conversations. And so I think as trans people, we build up this resilience to be like, all right, give me what you got. I've heard it all before. And truthfully, if I canceled every person that made me uncomfortable or said something weird or even, accidentally misgendered me, I would not have been elected. That is absolutely true. And so for me, it's really important to differentiate bigotry from ignorance. Folks who lead from a place of misunderstanding, oftentimes 99% of the time, they mean well, they want to do well, they want to be kind, but they might not have the language or the tools in their toolbox to get there. And on the other hand, there are people who are intentionally being hateful or discriminatory and could not care less about your feelings or your intention. And for me, I've become very intuitive in that way, and I'm sure most, if not all, trans people, and LGBTQ people have developed that kind of intuition to be able to tell where somebody is coming from. And, and if we were to only lead from a kind of purist cancel culture perspective, we would be missing out on a lot of people who mean well, but do not yet have the tools or the language to get there. And so I'm very aware and conscious that for some folks, I'm the first trans person they may ever meet, or they know they have ever met. And I don't pretend to represent all trans people, but to them, I might. And I don't want to leave them feeling worse about their perceptions of trans people, or more uncomfortable. So again, it isn't black and white, but it's really important that we are differentiating ignorance from bigotry, focusing on intention, and somebody might say something wrong or do something that isn't politically correct. But if if they have no intention to harm, they have space to learn. So I try my best to work from a place of compassion, and that can be really, really hard, But again, I think it's really important for us to understand that. And unfortunately, it's very easy to cancel people now. We can just unfollow or block them from social media, and we feel like we've done our job. But it's a much more complex issue than that.
Yeah, exactly. And so the next question that I have kind of shifts gears a little bit here. So now that the Supreme Court has affirmed marriage equality and employment protections, is the fight for LGBTQ plus rights over? And what does the modern fight for LGBTQ plus rights look like?
I love this question because every time the LGBT community gets a win or a piece of legislation is passed or a trans person is elected, all of my most amazing allies come to me and they say, "We did it, it's done, isn't this amazing?" And I clutch my pearls and I say, I wish it were finished. Yes, this is amazing, but we have a lot of work to do. That was a particular sentiment during marriage equality, when a lot of folks believed, that was the final frontier for the LGBT community, and we can kind of like close that chapter. And while marriage equality was absolutely a monumental shift and put LGBTQ rights into overdrive, for many folks, that's just the beginning. So if you remember this past June, we received a Supreme Court case that affirmed under the 1964 Civil Rights Act that LGBTQ people should be and will be protected in the workplace from discrimination, unlawful discrimination. That is powerful. And mind you, this is the most conservative Supreme Court of our lifetimes. Arguably, almost not. But it is. And I'm not a constitutional scholar, and so I did not have the wherewithal to see the possibility. I thought it was a absolute non-starter with this Supreme Court, but we did it. It passed, and so that gives me some hope with our new Supreme Court Justice, Justice Coney Barrett. I do not know what the future holds for LGBTQ rights on the Supreme Court. I'm less optimistic than I was in June, but nevertheless, I still hold hope. We have a lot of work to do. LGBTQ people are still, subject to discrimination in regards to housing and public accommodations. So, I'm very lucky here in Wheeling that we have a non-discrimination ordinance. But if I lived just 20 miles south, my landlord could evict me because they didn't like, what I wore, or they didn't like, that, my boyfriend or whatever, because of my trans identity. So there's something called the Equality Act that is the nationwide piece of federal legislation that would ensure that LGBTQ people are protected in public accommodations and in housing. But in West Virginia, we have something called the Fairness Act, which would guarantee statewide protections. And that might happen first, but not without your help. Make sure that you're contacting your state senators, your U.S. senators, Senator Manchin and Senator Capito, to support this piece of legislation. Fairness West Virginia is really doing a lot of good work. Andrew Schneider over there is a gem. I think all of us on this call have an obligation to, do our part that is less performative, do our part to push for legislation like that. So we have a long road ahead of us, but we are in a better place than we've ever been in American history for LGBTQ rights. And now with a potential or a presidency of President Biden and Vice President Harris, I'm that much more confident that if we're able to regain the Senate, we'll see, that we will be able to do some really good things for the LGBT community.
Yes, I agree. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit, you talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to ask you, I've seen before you've talked about that you didn't just run as a trans woman, but you didn't hide it. I was wondering if you could kind of expand on your experience running as a city councilwoman in Wheeling.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hide it and I couldn't hide it. They knew from a mile away what was going on. I've worked in the city of Wheeling for a very, very long time. I've worked statewide on, issues that are not LGBTQ specific. And I tell folks, I am not a subject matter expert on the LGBT community. I come from a perspective as a trans person, but I am not, a professional or an expert in any way. It matters to me. I'm a member of the community, but I would never, call myself an expert. And I think it's important for trans candidates, but really for any, candidate to have a wide and diverse scope of issues that they care about. No candidate should be elected because of their gender identity or their race or their sexuality alone. I mean, we are tasked with representing, many, many, many people who have various issues that impact them. So we ran a very community-based campaign focused on issues, ranging from racial justice to potholes, from vacant properties to affordable housing, things that mattered and were relevant to people here. I say I did not run to make history. I ran to make a difference in my community, and people responded to that. I'm sure some people voted for me so that because I was trans, and that would be new and interesting. But I hope and believe that most people voted, for me and supported me because they truly believed that we were going to do good work. But mind you, I only won my race by 15 votes. And I've done a lot of, conferences and presentations where people asked, particularly before the election, where people would ask me, why should people vote? Does it matter anyway? And I tell them, I said, let me tell you, I won my race by 15 votes. And so had I knocked 15 fewer doors or made 15 fewer phone calls, I would not be here right now. And that is why it is so critical that you are getting out to vote in every election, not just the general, because the people, if you do not vote, your neighbor's vote counts, is twice as powerful. So I try to tell people that all the time, that I ran a community-based campaign that I loved and won successfully, but not by a large margin. And that's why we need to be out and voting and participating every chance we get.
Yeah, and I think that the irony of that is that oftentimes local politics is the thing that affects you the most, and oftentimes those are the races that are the closest, and so your vote matters even more in those elections. So our next question is, and before you answer it, Dr. Turner will come on to kind of define some of the terms, but how would you recommend our students go from doing service to doing community engagement? And so Dr. Turner, I want to give you the opportunity to define those two.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Rosemary, for being here. This is really interesting and great discussion. And this is wonderful that you brought this up. Thank you, Colton. We have sometimes language, confuses us in the things that we're doing and the things we're pursuing, and it shouldn't. All of it reaches the same goal. But one of the things that we're trying to get our students to really understand and to become part of them is that community engagement is far more than just direct impact service, which is critical, but it is a piece of that whole engagement experience. So service at WVU, we consider that direct service to a nonprofit or to a small business, but community engagement is all that that encompasses. Everything that involves you in making a better place for us all to live is engagement. And we want to try to push our students from a stepping stone of service into a life of community engagement, which you obviously have done. So how do you differentiate the two, and what are the benefits?
Thank you, Dr. Turner and Colton. That's an incredible distinction and a really important question. I think, it's fascinating. We here in Wheeling and truthfully across the, state of West Virginia, we have incredible, service agencies from institutions like WVU and, Wheeling University here that really pride themselves on the service their students provide, but also in social service industries where folks can, work and volunteer and provide service. But exactly, service alone in that context is not necessarily comprehensive. And I found that, some folks who only, see that side of the experience, it's important to watch for this kind of savior mentality when we're working with vulnerable, populations. And it's something that I've, really been focused on in the kind of white savior conversation, but even in the, context of poverty and in the context of, gender, all of these things are really, really important. And so when you're able to take it a step further, that means you are integrated with your community in a holistic and a comprehensive way. You're not just, providing something, giving, extending your hand. You are part of that community. And here in Wheeling, that has been really easy because I absolutely love the people here. So, I live on 14th Street, and everybody knows 14th Street here in Wheeling, it's kind of like an institution because we are filled with social service resources and homes. Legitimately, people open their homes for our vulnerable community members. And if I only showed up to offer, food or pamphlets or assistance, I would be missing out on an incredible experience, actually getting to know our most vulnerable community members. So, pre-COVID, the homeless people that I would serve in, my capacity as a mental health professional, but also my capacity as a community organizer, we would sit and have meals and we wouldn't talk about, the issues. And I think, unfortunately, we really get caught up in how people are, disadvantaged and vulnerable in every conversation. And I'll tell you, particularly with our homeless community, they have a lot of opinions and experiences that they'd like to talk about, and not just their being homeless, and similar to, my trans experience. I love talking about being, trans. I love talking about rights and what we can do to, further, see out an inclusive environment for LGBTQ people. But I also love to talk about historic tax credits and affordable housing and so many other, things. And so I think for a person who loves service, but really wants to be integrated with their community, that happens in small moments. And that happens when you are vulnerable. And the last thing I'll say is that it is not a vulnerable position to provide a service. You're in a position of power and authority, frankly. And it is a position of vulnerability to actually be in that community. And for example, Kate Marshall is an incredible person here in the city of Wheeling. She runs a Catholic worker home, and she has AmeriCorps folks come to Wheeling and do service. And she tells a story that's so heartbreaking and fascinating about a time where she had a group of students to come and help serve at the soup kitchen. And, she brought the students to the soup kitchen, and they were under the assumption that they were going to serve food. But when they got there, she said, "We're going to serve no food today. We're going to eat the food, and we're going to sit with the community." And most folks were like, "Cool, that's great." But one of the members started to cry and kind of feel uncomfortable. And she said, no, I'm here to help. I'm not here to take. And Kate Marshall, said, "You're not taking, you are giving by sitting and spending time with these people." That is one of them. It's more powerful than being able to, plop food on a plate and hand it. And it changed this, I hope it changed this girl's perception of what it meant to serve and to be part of her community. And I think we all have something to learn, from experiences like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think oftentimes we don't realize that even the small things we do can really mean a big difference to people sometimes. So the intention of this perspective in and what now is to help us, the students, break away from negative thinking, which in turn leads to negative or agitative emotions, and then painful consequences via erroneous actions. Rosemary, we invited you here to speak to us tonight because you're an advocate, activist, politician, and community organizer with a high level of community organizing. How do we get to a point of thinking for ourselves, challenging convention, speaking our truth, strengthening our soul, and growing with our community as we engage in it?
I love it. So, one of the first things you were talking about reminded me of something. One of my clients, in mental health, we talk about, self-worth and self-perception a lot. And there's something called a negative feedback loop. And one of my clients calls it the negative feedback loop from hell in our brains. And essentially it describes the things we tell ourselves about ourselves. And we all have these things. And I want folks to take a minute to think about what their negative feedback loops are. Those phrases we tell ourselves that aren't healthy or good for us. Mine are, you're not good enough. It might be, who do you think you are? That's a big one for me. Whenever I want to take on a big project or something ambitious, that's kind of a feedback loop that runs through my brain. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you're equipped to do something like this? And while those are moments that check ourselves to be like, are you able? Are you capable to do this? They are oftentimes what prevents us from actually doing the most powerful and most important work. And so being ambitious is really tough, particularly when you're, you come from a place of authenticity and vulnerability, because you question yourself and you say, can I do this work? What are my intentions? What am I trying to achieve here? And so being able to check ourselves for humility is really important, but also ensuring that we are not our own worst enemy and that we're not engaging in self-sabotage. That happens a lot. And one of my favorite books I finished last summer, Becoming by Michelle Obama. And it's an incredible book. I recommend it to anybody. But she has an incredible excerpt in this book, or a segment about, her, coming up as a young lawyer in Chicago. And she talks about an experience that she had where she was, I think, the youngest partner in her firm, the only Black woman in her firm. And she goes to a first kind of partners board meeting, and she walks in, and it's all old white men, like 20 of them, and then her. And she feels incredibly overwhelmed and not prepared, and she's terrified, essentially. But she describes sitting at her desk and putting her notebook in front of her and trying to look and feel capable and professional. And she starts observing what's happening in the room and realizes that these men are not the smartest men that she's ever met. They're not the most capable or well-spoken. And her own ideas about herself really started to break down in front of her when she realized that these people were human, and painfully human in in some ways. And what she's describing there is imposter syndrome. For her, feeling like a fraud, feeling unworthy of these positions. And I don't know a single leader or community organizer or even a politician, I'll tell you, who has not had these moments of imposter syndrome, of feeling like, my goodness, am I actually, able to do this work? And, those are very sensitive moments, and they really reveal our humanity. And I ask folks to recognize when that's happening and to really push it back. And folks who come from vulnerable communities, marginalized communities, these feelings of imposter syndrome are only compounded by that vulnerability. So that's why representation matters, because we're able to then see, all right, yes, I can do that, or yes, the part of me that seems marginalized or unwelcome is actually part of the system in an integral way. So I'm sorry, I don't remember the last part of your question. I got caught up in my own ramblings. But I think it's so important for us, if you're willing and ready to take on leadership positions, to really work on your mental acuity, your emotional intelligence, and be the enemy to those negative feedback loops that we all use.
Great, thank you. And so the last question that I want to ask you is about when you won. I'm sure when you ran, like you said, you didn't expect to become famous, and it was kind of, I'm sure, a surprise. I know I saw you pretty much everywhere. Podcasts I listened to, TV shows, everything.
My condolences.
And so how do you balance that, kind of celebrity with still serving your community?
Well, thank you. I'm trying to stay humble, and you are not making that easy. No, I mean, I did not anticipate, first of all, I didn't know that I was going to win. And, we had I think a very smart and strategic plan to win. And then COVID hit, and we had no plan for that, of course. As an organizer, I've knocked many, many doors. I've worked on some congressional campaigns in the past, and I knew that face-to-face contact was one of the best ways, the best way to earn the trust of your community and then to get elected. We started to canvass early in door knock, but it wasn't early enough. We were only able to cover about 30% of our district before we had to shut it down. So I had a little bit of confidence before COVID, and I was like absolutely not prepared and really, considered what it would look like to lose this race, because I was up against some folks who were better established than I was, who had kind of family names and other things. But we pushed through and we remained resilient, which is really, really important. Practicing, and building resilience is absolutely key. But moving forward, it's really important that we, kind of take stock of who we are. I'm no different a person than I was on June 8th, the day before Election Day, than June 9th and June 10th. I'm so grateful that we were able to really represent our community and our state well. I don't have to tell folks on this call, but, people outside West Virginia have unflattering views of the state of West Virginia. And I came up against that time and time again. I would do an interview with, some news station out of LA or New York or Chicago, and they would go, "Congratulations, that's amazing, but please tell us, how did somebody like you get elected in a place like that?" And I have to find my, happy place and become Zen. And respond in a way that I thought was thoughtful, because that's all they had to say for me to understand, who exactly they believe West Virginians are. And while I know many of us feel somewhat disheartened by this past election, I don't want to assume anybody's political affiliation, but we in West Virginia doubled down on a lot of things that some people believe. And while some people feel less enthusiastic, I think that West Virginia is absolutely the best place in the country to get involved. Because in West Virginia, if you are a leader, you are a big fish in a small pond. And that's unfortunate. I wish we were a big pond. But, I was elected in my community because, I represent, values and principles that do not seem common anywhere else in the state. And while that's not exactly true, it really does tell us, a little bit about what people believe about the state of West Virginia. So, we started off this conversation, talking about mental health, and I think that, West Virginia has a self-esteem problem. We really need to work on that, and we need to gas ourselves up any chance we get, because we are pretty awesome. And so with that, I absolutely, feel more focused on my community than ever before. I'm grateful for the national media attention, and I take it any chance I get, because I know, we need it as a state. But I take those opportunities to talk about West Virginia issues like substance use disorder, like, mental health, and so many of the other things we face, because, that's how we actually see change.
Thank you. I believe now we're going to give everybody some time to send questions to you in the chat. Is that right?
Yes. I'm not going to say anything. This is going great. Let's see here. I will open up the questions here. If you could, please submit a question to the chat, and we'll take care of those. Let me take my picture out there. Okay. Do you see your, Rosemary, first cousin, do you see yourself running for Senate or Congress?
Oh, thank you. So this is when my imposter syndrome kicks in and I say, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, there's no way. You know, one very, very, lucky thing that we have here in Wheeling, we have 4-year terms. And one of my, greatest criticisms, I also get it, about politics is that we have oftentimes, particularly here in West Virginia, House of Delegates members have 2-year cycles. And that means you get elected. And as soon as you get elected, you have to start thinking about your next campaign. And that really, I think, is prohibitive to actually getting things done. So we have a 4-year term here in the city of Wheeling. And if you can't get anything done in 4 years, you should never run for office. Again, so I'm really excited to prove myself in this office. And if in 4 years I feel really confident in the work that we've done and feel that we can take it to the next level, I would absolutely consider running for, a seat to represent more folks. But we'll see. I don't want to make any promises.
All right. Rosemary, what motivated you to run for office?
So I, like I've said prior, I've worked with vulnerable community members and really, worked against this system in so many ways. And I think a lot of organizers see this, but, when I was a community organizer, I believed that politicians and community organizers were different people, and so different they should be enemies. Because so many of the times that I, worked with politicians, it was trying to convince them to pass a piece of legislation or figuring out what the perfect sentence would be, to change their mind about something that they believed, and not for principled reasons, but for political reasons on their part. And it really put a sour taste in my mouth. And I thought, my goodness, this isn't good. But then I began to realize, when I considered, rather than, looking at the table, from the outside in, maybe I should try to get a seat at the table myself. I realized then that politicians should be the very community organizers in their neighborhoods. Community organizers have every skill set and characteristic to make a good politician. And a good politician is a good community organizer, and a good community organizer is integrated and involved in what's happening in their neighborhoods and their districts. So at that point, I realized it was, easier to replace them than to convince them. And I threw my hat in the ring, which I would suggest absolutely everybody who even for a moment might consider running for office should do it, because it's not as hard as you think, in my experience, and it's more fun than you'll ever have. And if you're ever considered running for office in West Virginia or anywhere else, just I'll give you my cell phone number and we can chat.
And thank you, Devin. We have another question from a student. Do you believe that bipartisan is important in politics, and is it possible nowadays?
Yes and yes. I think that we exist in a majority 2-party system where we have Republicans and we have Democrats. So inherently, our system is built to be bipartisan. And what's fascinating is we are in a time that feels more polarized than ever, and people cannot and will not work together. And in some ways, those are principled ways. It's hard to work with somebody who at base does not believe this, does not use the same facts and does not seem to live in the same world as you do. That's really hard. And I don't want to marginalize or, or make that seem, Pollyannish. But bipartisanship is really important, and something that, local leaders, I think, are uniquely well positioned to do. So, our city council here, and I want to say that all city councils in the state of West Virginia are nonpartisan. I did not run with an R or a D next to my name, and had I done that, I might not have been elected. Truthfully, judging by the map that we saw just a couple days ago, how the election turned out in West Virginia, and so that in and of itself gives me the opportunity to really start conversations that do not start on the party line. And I think and hope that's where true bipartisanship starts. And, bipartisanship is actually happening here in the state of West Virginia. Fascinatingly enough, we're the only, and Andrew Schneider would be a better person to answer this question, but I believe we're the only state the only state in the nation where the majority leader, who is Republican, actually supports the Equality Act and the Fairness Act to grant LGBTQ people comprehensive rights in the state. That's our Republican majority leader who says, yes, this matters, I'm signing on. He's the only Republican majority leader in the country to sponsor the bill. So that is the, emblematic of bipartisanship. So it's still possible. It's really hard, but again, I think it takes time and compassion and patience, which are, again, in low supply in politics right now. Good question.
I'm sorry about that. I was muted. Dr. Carr, do you think the Wheeling City Council will ever try to implement a citizens police review board again?
Fascinating. So, okay. This is a really, really important question. We worked on creating a citizens review board, and if folks don't know, a citizens review board essentially is a go-between law enforcement and it's essentially a board that helps keep law enforcement accountable, particularly in personnel issues. And it's something that exists. It's a model that exists in many, many cities and states across the nation, and something that we've actually brought to council here in Wheeling before my term started. And after passing the resolution to declare racism a public health crisis, I have absolutely recognized that we cannot be performative or symbolic. We have no time for that. That was politics of yesteryear. We absolutely have to make sure that we are plugging in actionable items that we can be held accountable on. So in our resolution, we made it a point that every city employee must be trained in implicit bias training. We made it a point that we have to meet and set certain milestones so that our city government and administration reflects our community in the way that it is built and its diversity. And a part of racial justice work is making sure that everybody is protected. Rather than saying defund the police, I think we really need to have conversations about reimagining how we protect our communities. And a citizen review board is, I think, a smart way to do that. I have not had conversations since being elected with our current council about what that would look like, but I plan to. And we have community support for that. So, Doctor, yes, we are absolutely, I am absolutely willing to have those conversations. And I believe it can happen. I truthfully do. But we'll see. I'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Rosemary. I have one more question for you. Well, I may end up having more, but we have one more question for you before we conclude this evening. What advice would you give to trans people just beginning their journey to who they are?
This is a tough one because every experience is very different. What worked for me was finding a community that was there to support me and to help me. And I'm absolutely privileged to be part of a family that loves and supports me from day one, and being able to find a community that reflects my values. My advice to a trans person who's just getting started, and that can mean a lot of things. I know many trans people in their 40s and 50s and 60s who are just acknowledging their gender identity and really just starting their journey. And my advice is to find your tribe. Really find the folks who are there to love and support you and to enjoy the journey with you. Often we talk about like trans experiences in a traumatic way of just like, my goodness, isn't this terrible? And I think there's a lot of joy in the experience. And I think you need to find folks who can not just reflect that joy, but enhance and empower you through it. And that's easier said than done. But I think in West Virginia, we are for all of our warts and wrinkles, we are one of the friendliest states, there is. And people who might not understand, what it's like to be trans, even still are willing to help and support and learn, and spread joy through that process. That's been my experience. So find your tribe is the most important thing. And that can be across the street or across the world, even now that we're Zooming. I think that is one of the most important things you can do.
Rosemary, thank you so much. I got one more question for you. In a social and political environment where there are so many forms of injustice, how do you keep yourself from falling into the trap of becoming overwhelmed, but not being able to fix everything?
Yeah, I mean, we have to have conversations about burnout and compassion fatigue. These are real and persistent problems, and are experienced by virtually every community that is up against an avalanche of discrimination and obstacle. And so that's really hard because I'm sure we all feel burnout from Zooms and from community events and from our consistent notifications. Every day there's a new rule and a new whatever. And these past 4 years have been incredibly taxing for many of us. So I think that it is a daily practice of, really putting your mental health first and putting your, ensuring that self-care is top of your list. And self-care, like I said before, there is no bath bomb in the world that will, cure you or make you, feel good about yourself. And so you have to be doing the real and tangible things. So, find a therapist who can help. I'm privileged enough to know every therapist within a 30-mile radius. So I feel good in that realm. But also you have to take yourself out of the work. You are not your job. And this comes from a person who has no work-life balance whatsoever. But I tell myself I am not my job. And while I see my values and my principles reflected in the work that I do, and I feel made better and more whole because of the work that I do, I am not the work that I do. So being able to ensure that you are able to separate that from yourself is important, and find a hobby. Like I learned how to play guitar over the quarantine, and I've been having a blast. My roommate has not, but I have been having a lot of fun. So I think those are some of the ways that work for me and prevent burnout and fatigue.
Rosemary, first of all, you're killing it, right?
Oh,
I'm trying to sit still in my chair, and I'm not doing a good job at it. But Colt, I was going to tell you that I was going to ask you more questions, but the majority of the last couple of things were how good of a job Colton did. I don't even know. That's not a question. It's more of a statement. I don't know what to say. So Colton, great job. But Rosemary, I want to thank you for coming here this evening, providing an opportunity for our students to hear the embodiment of engagement and service, to hear someone actualize their truth. I did not know you were a therapist, so I am quite sure the question spoke to you.
Not a licensed therapist, but one day maybe.
you were definitely doing it. But and again, this being for the students, Rosemary, while you're on here, I want to also give an opportunity to acknowledge some of the people on this call right now that are here as resources for our students. And there's quite a few of them here. So I'm gonna unmute all of y'all. If anything crazy happens, Rosemary, I want to tell you it was wonderful meeting you, because I will cut this thing off quick. All right. So if I'm going to unmute everybody, so if I can get an opportunity to get, if you are a part of one of the departments or a department chair or just one of the departments here, I would like you to take an opportunity to introduce yourself. I see Jack Watson here. I see a couple other people. So introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what department you work for, so the students know that this is a resource for me.
Hi, Rosemary. This was a wonderful session. I really, really enjoyed it, and I hope that this gets out to a whole bunch of people. I'm the Dean of the College of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences, and I've truly enjoyed listening and watching, and hope that I can send this out. I hope it's being recorded so we can send it out to students in our college, because I think it's a great resource and you're an inspiration.
Thank you very much, Jack. Anyone else? Dr. Carr, introduce yourself, brother.
Sorry, just had to unmute myself. So my name is Jerry Carr. I am the president of the Morgantown Kingwood branch of the NAACP. So, I've worked with President Owens Brown and, and also President Darrell Clausell. So greetings, it's good to meet you, and excited about what the work y'all are going to do, and we're definitely interested in that topic of police reform. We're working it through our municipality, and we look for any advice we can get, since we know that y'all tried it first, basically.
Jerry, she's a cousin, so I got you.
We appreciate it.
Dr. Turner, would you like to introduce yourself?
I got the chance to speak a little earlier, so
I know.
he just loves to put me on the spot there. I am the director at the center. I get to work with this amazing team of folks and the amazing students that come out with such passion. Colton, amazing job. Rosemary, I am so excited to have met you and had you on, and we hope you stay involved with us.
You got to unmute yourself. Oh, here you go. There you go, Rosemary.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right. Dean Ferris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Eric, and hey, Rosemary, and everyone. Thank you, Eric. I'm on 2 Zooms right now, so I'm fortunate I'm actually able to multitask and listen to both and participate in both. So thank you, and thank you everyone else for participating tonight. It's a great program.
Thank you, Dean Ferris. I can't really see everyone's name, but if you are a head of a department or a head of an organization and you work for the benefit of our students here on this campus, please introduce yourself.
I can introduce myself. My name's Janice Shaw. I work at the Caruth Center here at WVU, so it's the counseling center for our students. So if you're ever dealing with any, just need some support, need some help, dealing with any mental health issues, we offer free counseling services to all of our students. And if you're going home for the holidays and you're going to be out of state, we also have we have a free counseling service that we can, help hook you up with. So, but just wanted to say hi from Caruth. And Rosemary, it was so nice hearing you speak. It was just really awesome. I'm really glad I was able to join. So thank y'all.
You're more than welcome. Is Asuri here? I thought I saw her.
I am still here. Hi, everyone. My name is Aisuri Vasquez. I use she and her pronouns. And I am from the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm actually the Diversity Outreach Coordinator, so I work a lot with identity-based student organizations and our diversity ambassadors. Colton is actually one of our diversity ambassadors, and I was very, very excited to watch him turn out and do this and provide some support. We actually also hosted Councilwoman Ketchum over the summer on a panel, and so this was really, really great. Thank you all so much for providing this event and for constantly providing information, knowledge, and resources for our students.
Thank you, Asuri. And we also, a lot of the students here, you guys all like to do community service, engage in the community, and sometimes you like to engage with the nonprofits. And I know that, Rosemary, some of the things you did was working with nonprofit organizations and willing, and we have our nonprofit. Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Ketchum. Wonderful program. I am Catherine Whitworth, and I work with the Center for Service and Learning with Eric and the rest of the team. Always happy to connect an interested student with a nonprofit that can benefit from their skills and help you learn and grow. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. And if you students on this call, I know you're trying to do your service hours, you're trying to get engaged in the community, and sometimes you just don't know how to do that. Well, we have iServe. Carrie, would you like to introduce yourself? Uh-oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. There we go. I keep telling her, stop buying those earphones from the Dollar General. Those things don't work.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Eric, for that lovely intro. I am the iServe administrator, so if anybody has any questions about anything that's on iServe, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have a call that you are more than welcome to sign up for. But Councilwoman Ketchum, this was awesome. Like, I just want you to know how inspiring you are, and I hope that the students pull something from this, because I know I certainly did. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie.
You know, you see that she put her real cell phone in there, because I blow her phone up. I'm letting you know, I've been blowing her phone up. But you know, as we've been talking about this, you know, some of the students here, maybe you want to do a class that has service learning aspect to it, or something like that. And we have another person on this call that could maybe answer that. Ligiani, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Ligiani Castro Gregory. You guys can call me Ligi, and I'm the Academic Community Engagement Coordinator for the Center for Service and Learning. And yes, if you're interested on taking a service and learning class, I'm more than happy to take you towards that direction. And I also work with the faculty that they want to include that service and learning component in their classrooms. I am the person that you should to reach out to. And thank you so much, Cotton and Rosemary. I've learned so much today. This was a phenomenal talk, and I'm so glad I took the time to be here and to be with you guys.
Ligi, you don't make me smile. So this is not last. This is not the last person. So students, if you're trying to do something like you're passionate, like Colton is, or like, you know, I think Corey was when he was a young person, or when Christy was a young whippersnapper. We have something here on our campus that you could utilize, the Social Action Clinic. Amelia, would you like to introduce yourself? Slider.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amelia Jones, and I serve as the AmeriCorps Vista at the Center for Service and Learning for the Social Action Clinic. Our Social Action Clinic works to serve our students, to saturate our campus with service opportunities, and to help empower students develop their own social action projects. So when you come into my office or drop in virtually, as we are doing right now, you have the opportunity to especially curate a project that is specific to your passions, where you can directly influence your community and make positive, tangible change. Colton is actually going through the social action project process right now. And what we do here is we help you research, curate, market, and execute your project in ways that touches on all facets of not only West Virginia University's campus, but also the Morgantown area, and as well as the entirety of West Virginia. So if this is something that is up your alley and you have an idea, please feel free to reach out to me. No idea is too big nor too small. That's what we are here for. And your passion is important, and it will make a difference. So if you need anything from me, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to meet with you.
I'm smiling on the inside. I know y'all can see it in my eyeballs. I know you can. So the last person I want to introduce is my homie from another mother. My brother, I think, are you the program manager or program director? I just want to introduce my buddy, Brad Grimes. Brad, go for it, brother.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Grimes. I'm program specialist at the LGBTQ+ Center here on campus. I really want to take a moment to commemorate and commend Eric and the Center for Service and Learning for such a great program. Tonight's been amazing. Colton, your questions were really insightful and poignant. Thank you for those. And Councilwoman Ketchum, amazing, amazing conversation. Thank you. So yes, the LGBTQ Center is here on campus. We're happy to help anyone who identifies as LGBTQ+ or an ally. We're here to promote and foster a safer, more inclusive environment to help everyone succeed academically, professionally, and to thrive in the fullest way personally as part of what WVU's one family. So if you need resources, please reach out. We have a website that lists national, state, local, and even campus resources. we're available to talk to you and help you at any time. If you're having problems with like discrimination or feel unsafe in your housing, let us know. We'll help walk you through it and get you connected to the people who can help you. Again, amazing program. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, brother. Brad, one of the things we had talked about this evening, just because of what we're doing this in the week of transgender remembrance, I know you had a slideshow that you would like to share. We have made you co-host, brother. If you would like to share that slideshow, people on the call here, it's brief and I think important.
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you,
And I just
Brad.
wanted to preface that with, so this slideshow shows about 34 people who have been killed so far this year due to acts of violence and transphobia, so violence against the trans community. So it's really important on Transgender Day of Remembrance that we pause, as we did earlier at the beginning of this meeting, to reflect on the lives that are lost and to celebrate the lives that have been sadly taken from us, and to remember that we still have a lot of work to do. As Councilwoman Ketchum mentioned, yeah, we've made a lot of progress, but the work never feels done. And it's not until the world is safe for everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, there's work to do. So I'm happy to share that slideshow. Just give me 1 second, please, and I'll get that started. Oop. I probably should share the screen first.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what happens. So that concludes the slideshow. It's very powerful to see such beautiful young lives taken from us too soon. And it's interesting to note, like about talking about earlier community engagement, we see that like there's more than just LGBTQ or homophobia or transphobia. There was a disproportionate amount of these people who were people of color. So there's work on every level to do in our community to help us all feel safe and to remember that like there are no special rights, just human rights.
Mhm.
Well, I want to again thank you, Rosemary, for coming this evening. I think that this is the beginning of us. I mean, it's not the beginning. Let me say that differently. This is an opportunity for us to continue to work together. I hope the slides showed the importance of us being a community as one WVU and making sure that we do what we need to do, engage in our community, serve our community, find your most authentic self, and understand that that is a journey. So with that being said, with respect for your time, it is now 7:24. Everyone have a wonderful evening. Brad, Colton, Rosemary, thank you very much. Everyone have a beautiful evening.
Bye, folks.
Thank you, Eric.
Peace.
Thank you so much, Rosemary.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a great evening.